Microevolution and speciation are part of the theory of evolution. So, can a creationist accept microevolution and speciation? Are microevolution and speciation compatible with Genesis? That's the question we are asking. Think of two possible different meanings for the word kind in Genesis. Does it mean species as science now understands it? Or, two, is the Genesis kind just a general term for basic types of animals? It seems more likely that the second definition is the correct one. And usually the term is not even used in connection with reproduction. It just talks about God made different kinds of animals. Now let's ask, is there evidence that some biological change is possible within created kinds of organisms? One example of that would be variation in humans. Look around the classroom. Do you see differences in the people here? Obviously, there has been some change in people since the creation. Another example is variation in domestic animals. There are many kinds of domestic pigeons which have been bred from the rock dove. There are a great variety of chickens. There are even chickens with 12-foot-long tail feathers. There are many kinds of dogs. All this variation has to have come since creation. There are over 200 varieties of dogs, and where did they come from? They have all come about by human selective breeding from the ancestral wolf, and this is change now that has come since creation. So this is another illustration of how much change is possible in the created types of animals. Another example would be parasites and carnivores. Parasites certainly were not created that way, and carnivores that create a lot of suffering in their prey animals. That doesn't look like something that would have been in the Garden of Eden. Also, we can do experiments to select features. We can, in the laboratory, animals that are a little different from what we started with. So these are all examples of change since creation. Let's ask whether we can see evidence of biological change in nature. One of my favorite examples is chipmunks. Here we have 2 species of chipmunks, and they're actually a lot more than that. In California alone, you have 13 species of chipmunks. Here are a number of them. They are so similar, it's quite a task to learn to identify them. And yet they know each other apart. They don't interbreed. Each of these species has its own range in California, some in the mountains in the north, some in the Sierra Nevada mountains, others in the southern part of the state. Now, did God create each of those species where they are now? Certainly He could have, but there seems to be a lot of evidence that He did not. These chipmunks spread over the area after the flood, and they each adapted to these different mountain ranges and different regions and became different species. One more example will be lovebirds, parakeets. On the left, you see portrayed the assumption of most scientists that these came from other parrots. The simpler lovebirds with not so much color and with simple behavior evolved into this more complex species. On the right, we see another possibility. You don't make any assumption. You just say, well, they have changed since creation. And maybe even the more colorful ones with more complex behaviors were the originals, and the others have developed from them and lost some of those features. There's another line of research that creationists use. It's called baraminology research. They're using hybridization to try to identify some of the original created kinds of organisms. And here are some examples. The family Canidae, the dogs, wolves, foxes, and jackals, they can all interbreed. So maybe that was one original created kind. The next family, Equidae, the horses, donkeys, and zebras, they can interbreed. Maybe that's another created type. And then there's a family Anatidae. Skip on down to the family Phasianidae. Pheasants, quail, and turkeys can interbreed. And maybe each of these is an example of an original created kind. I could also suggest that a biblical understanding explains microevolution better than a naturalistic theory. There is evidence that microevolution can happen. And when creationists object to evolution, they are talking about macroevolution. Macroevolution is what you see in this picture. All these types of animals evolving from simple bacteria. That's macroevolution, and that's what we don't think ever happened. Macroevolution is evolution above about the family level. In conclusion, microevolution and speciation are, I believe, compatible with the Bible and supported by abundant scientific evidence. Change is not primarily from random mutations and natural selection. Change occurs within the created genetic potential of each created group of organisms. Evidence is now indicating that microevolution and speciation can occur much more rapidly than used to be believed.